Why are we live? Well, we want to go over the wings of the same vulture, right? Groupthink, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, this, that, and the third. Whatever it may be that you choose to label yourself as, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you become subjected to confirmation bias, right? So when you say, I'm a this, I'm a that, you start acting accordingly. And we tend to find reasons to confirm that selection of that label. So please try not to be offended. I'm sure many people might get offended over some of the things I'm about to say. But yeah, that's right. Labels are for jars, not people. We're bigger than just any one label. You know, I'm a man. I'm a libertarian. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I'm a libertarian. I have a lot of different views that conflict with other people because they choose to label themselves as one particular thing. And there's a lack of nuanced thought and articulation of your position and why you choose that one label, right? Groupthink is a huge, huge issue in the political and social spheres. And it's what keeps us divided. It really does. It keeps us divided, and it keeps us from having a conversation on why Biden, why Trump, right? Just for examples. This is bigger than Biden. This is bigger than Trump. Okay? So the Democrat and the Republican Party, as an example, I like to use, they're two big brothers. So you get to choose between two big brothers, and each of them wants to take your lunch money or your allowance, right? These big brothers want what you have. One of them's going to give you a wet willy until you comply, and the other one is going to give you a wedgie until you comply. Who do you choose between? Neither? Is that an option? No, it's not. So there's a false idea that we have an amount of choice in these decisions, and we really don't. So which big brother do you want to take your lunch money? Do you want a wet willy or a wedgie? I say neither. There's a lot of people who love Trump, and they literally worship him as some sort of idol. And he's just a man. He's a human being, just like you and I. He has flaws. He is not perfect. So yeah, I'm about to criticize Trump for all you Trumpers out there. Okay? He was big on pushing red flag laws. He's the one who locked down the country. He's the one that did the warp speed on the vaccines. So Biden is just a continuation of the two wings of the vulture. Biden is following through on everything that Trump put forward, right? Maybe there's a few things here and there that, you know, doesn't seem that way, but 100% they are both the federal government, right? The problem with this is that the issues that we face are bigger than Trump and bigger than Biden. These are issues about freedom and tyranny. It's not about Republican and Democrat, left or right, right? Two sides of the same coin. Exactly, KJ. So when we go to these events and there's people saying, fuck Biden, let's go Brandon, Fuck both of them. Fuck Trump and fuck Biden. I know you don't want to hear that, but it divides the community and it divides the people from moving forward. So before I get too long-winded, I have some articles to read here. You can check the links if you just want to skip through all my rhetoric. You can do that. The links are in the description, right? So groupthink, and this is an article by the staff at Psychology Today. Groupthink is a phenomenon that occurs when a group of well-intentioned people makes irrational or non-optimal decisions spurred by the urge to conform or the belief that dissent is impossible. The problematic or premature consensus that is characteristic of groupthink may be fueled by a particular agenda, or it may be due to group members valuing harmony and coherence above critical thought. So this is a problem where people just want to play nice and get along and go along to get along. That's groupthink, okay? Why groupthink happens? The term groupthink was first introduced in the November 1971 issue of Psychology Today by psychologist Irving Janis. Janis had conducted extensive research on group decision-making under conditions of stress. Since then, Janis and other researchers have found that in a situation that can be characterized as groupthink, individuals tend to refrain from expressing doubts and judgments or disagreeing with the consensus. In the interest of making a decision that furthers their group cause, members may also ignore ethical or moral consequences. While it is often invoked at the level of geopolitics or within business organizations, groupthink can also refer to a subtler process of social or ideological conformity, such as participating in bullying or rationalizing a poor decision made by one's friends or one's group, right? What causes groupthink? Groups that prioritize their group identity and behave coldly towards outsiders may be more likely to fall victim to groupthink. Organizations in which dissent is discouraged or openly punished are similarly likely to engage in groupthink when making decisions. High stress is another root cause, as is time pressure that demands a fast decision, right? Why can groupthink be dangerous? Groups that prioritize their group identity and behave coldly towards, sorry about that. Let me back up or go forward. So why can groupthink be dangerous? Even in minor cases, groupthink triggers decisions that aren't ideal or that ignore critical information. In highly consequential domains like politics or the military, groupthink can have much worse consequences, leading groups to ignore ethics or morals, prioritize one specific goal while ignoring countless collateral consequences, or at worst, instigate death and destruction. Can groupthink ever be positive? Groupthink, by definition, results in a decision that is irrational and dangerous. It is possible, however, for teams to make decisions harmoniously and with little disagreement in ways that are not necessarily indicative of groupthink. While well-functioning teams can and should have some conflict, debate, as long as it's respectful, is antithetical to groupthink. Groupthink does not allow debate. It doesn't get to the root of the issue, right? The central point. Are groupthink and conformity the same thing? Groupthink and conformity are related but distinct concepts. Groupthink specifically refers to a process of decision-making It can be motivated by a desire to conform, but isn't always. Conformity, on the other hand, pertains to individuals who, intentionally or unintentionally, shift their behaviors, appearances, or beliefs to sync up to those of the group. What are some major examples of groupthink? Risky or disastrous military maneuvers, such as the escalation of the Vietnam War or the invasion of Iraq, are commonly cited as instances of groupthink. In Janus's original article, he highlighted groupthink during the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion. How to recognize and avoid groupthink. To recognize groupthink, it's useful to identify the situations in which it's most likely to occur. When groups feel threatened, either physically or through threats to their identity, they may develop a strong us versus them. Like when I criticize Trump, the Trumpers get pissed off. But when I criticize Biden, the Bideners get pissed off. So you can't win, right? Groupthink is very, very pervasive and destructive. This can prompt members to accept group perspectives, even when those perspectives don't necessarily align with their personal views. Groupthink may also occur in situations in which decision-making is rushed, in some cases with destructive outcomes. To minimize the risk, it's critical to allow enough time for issues to be fully discussed and for as many group members as possible to share their thoughts. Not ad hominem attacks and logical fallacies, but to share your thoughts and your questions, right? Articulate yourself. When dissent is encouraged, groupthink is less likely to occur. Learning about common cognitive biases, as well as how to identify them, may also reduce the likelihood of groupthink. I suggest everyone go to logicalfallacies.org, and you can learn what logical fallacies and cognitive biases are in nice little examples. Very, very easy to understand. And once you understand these things, you see when people are doing them, and you don't get frustrated and upset and succumb to emotional reasoning, right? To minimize the risk, it's critical to allow enough time for issues to be fully discussed and for as many group members as possible to share their thoughts. But I think I might have read that already. When dissent is encouraged, groupthink is less likely to occur. Learning about common cognitive biases, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, learn about common cognitive biases. I mean, I got cards, I got posters over here in my living room, cognitive bias and logical fallacy posters. So, people got to step their game up for real. What are the symptoms of groupthink? Individual members of the group are self-censoring. What does that remind you of? I'm going to call them out right now. Reopen, rebuild, right? There are groups and they have groupthink. It's all about the group. It's not about the actual movement and the principles of the movement and why we're fighting for freedom, but it's about the group and what the leaders of the group say is okay and what's not okay. Especially if they fear being shunned or derided for speaking their mind. How many people have been censored and kicked out of groups just for asking a question or just for putting out a different opinion, right? A lot of us, I'm sure. If those who do dissent are pressured to recant or conform to the majority of view, it may similarly signal groupthink. Groups that actively deride outsiders may be more likely to fall prey. What is the best way to avoid groupthink? Since groupthink often occurs because group members fear disagreeing with the leader, it can be beneficial for the leader to temporarily step back and allow members to debate the issue themselves, One member of the team can be appointed as the devil's advocate. And this is a great strategy. Somebody's always got to be the devil's advocate, who will argue against the consensus to highlight potential flaws. Why is it good to allow dissent? Never mind, it's the First Amendment, right? Healthy dissent has been linked to more creative thinking and ultimately greater innovation within organizations. Asking one person to deliberately play devil's advocate and argue with the solutions proposed by the majority is one strategy that has been shown to be effective against groupthink. I'm on a live stream. So, does diversity guard against groupthink? Diversity, both demographic diversity and diversity of thought, has been shown to reduce the possibility of groupthink, right? Which is the whole point of this, is why I'm trying to get everybody out of this Trump-Biden delusional madness that we're suffering from, right? Group members, different backgrounds, beliefs, or personality traits can all spawn unique ideas that can inspire innovation. It's critical, though, that all group members, regardless of their position or demographics, be allowed to contribute to group decision making. How can organizations encourage critical thinking? Organizations that want to support critical thinking, creativity, and innovation should first foster a culture where dissent is allowed and encouraged. They should reward risk-taking, be open to ideas from all group members, regardless of their experience or position. Doesn't matter how many years you've been doing this. It doesn't matter what your credentials are. An idea is an idea, and it could come from a 12-year-old child or a 70-year-old woman, right? So, regardless of their experience or position, and create regular opportunities for individuals to share their ideas, big and small. If we can't do that, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to remain divided and conquered, because right now we are conquered, and the war is getting us all united. So let me check my notes here, and I do have a couple more articles. I'm not sure how long this thing's going to go. I haven't timed it out. This is all freestyle, is unscripted. I do have some notes here, though. So yeah, I mean, Biden is continuing with these mandates that Trump started. Wings of the same vulture, people. Also, both Biden and Trump blocked the release of the JFK files, the JFK assassination CIA files. Okay? Trump blocked them when he was in office, and Biden just blocked them last week. Wings of the same vulture. Worshipping Trump as some sort of God or second coming of Christ is worshiping a false idol. I know there's a lot of Christians out there, but this is worshiping a false idol, in my opinion. I'm not a Christian. Let's go, Brandon. It's funny. I don't like Biden. I like Trump more than Biden. I'd rather get a wet willy than a wedgie. But it's ultimately divisive, and it makes us all look like diehard Trump fans and Trump supporters, and that's not what this movement is about. It is not about Trump. The election is a big issue, but it's beyond Trump, and it's beyond Biden. So obviously, this thing drives me apeshit. Literally. Drives me apeshit. The Trump flags, it's fine. Express yourself. But you also got to know your audience. When it's a broader audience, you're not at a Trump rally or a Biden rally for that matter. Why are you bringing those flags? Why are you making it all about Trump or Biden? you're keeping out a lot of people that could jump on and demand freedom of choice and the following of the Constitution. We're literally dividing ourselves. All right? So now we're going to talk about religion. And this is really, if I didn't piss people off before, this is really going to piss some people off. Okay? Religious preferences are protected by the First Amendment. And shoving your belief down other people's throats is a violation of the First Amendment. It's also divisive and a major turnoff to many other people that would join the fight. Don't make this about your mindful beliefs out there as well. People that are agnostic or Buddhist or whatever it may be, that you turn it into Muslim festival or a festival, Jewish festival, when it's supposed about freedom, you're limiting the people, the size of the group. We all encompassing group, if there is a group. So probably going to lose a few people here. This article, link there. This is about Constitution and the establishment of religion. So this isn't the full article. You can go read the full article. This is by Rob Nadel over at 10th Amendment Center. If you're not following Amendment Center, check them out, 10thamendment.com and 10th Amendment Center YouTube as well. The First Amendment provides Congress should no law respecting an establishment of religion. For obvious reasons, call this phrase the Establishment Clause. In the 20th century, the Supreme Court ruled, reasons less obvious, that the Establishment Clause restricts not only Congress but all branches of government, and not only government but the state as well. Cases involving the Establishment Clause are often difficult to decide. More liberal Supreme Court justices have argued that the clause requires officials to ensure an absolute or nearly absolute wall of separation between religion and government. According to this view, the motto, "In God We Trust," should be removed from our coins and the words "under God" expunged from the Pledge of Allegiance. On the other side of the spectrum, some argue that the clause was designed only, one, to prevent the federal government from creating an English-style official church, and two, to protect state official churches. Some say the clause is violated only if government coerces people into religious conformity, or if the government endorses some religions over others, or supports religion over non-religion. The confusion arises largely because when the First Amendment was proposed in 1789 and ratified between 1789 and 1791, there was little public discussion about what it meant. So in searching for evidence of the meaning, writers have gone very far afield. Some look to events as early as 1636, long before the Establishment Clause was written. Others look to the 19th century, long after the clause was adopted. The real key to the meaning of the Establishment Clause lies in events between 1786 and 1790. Prior to that time, almost every American state used tax money to fund selected churches and imposed religious texts on office holders. By 1786, however, a move to disestablish state churches was underway. The most famous incident of this kind was James Madison's successful fight to block a church funding tax in Virginia. The following year, the Constitutional Convention met in Philadelphia. George Washington, the convention president, received a letter from Jonas Phillips, a leader of the Philadelphia Jewish community. Phillips complained that the state still treated Jews as second-class citizens. He noted that the Jews have been true and faithful, And during the late contest with England, they have been foremost in aiding and assisting the states with their lives and fortunes. They have supported the cause, have bravely fought and bled for liberty, which they cannot enjoy. Accordingly, Phillips asked the delegates not to include a religious test in the new Constitution. And the delegates agreed. They produced a document banning religious texts as requirements for federal office. But the Constitution did require state and federal office holders to take an oath or affirmation, a calling of God as a witness. Under the law of the time, this excluded atheists from office. To become effective, the Constitution had to be approved by popular conventions in the states. At these conventions, many opponents complained about the Constitution's lack of a religious test. Some opponents wanted to limit federal office to Christians. Others wanted to restrict it to Protestants. Opponents warned that without a religious test, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, pagans, deists, and even atheists might be elected. Oh no. The response of the Constitution supporters became the basis of the constitutional bargain. It crystallized the principles by which the federal government was to treat religion. First, they pointed out that the oath requirement excluded atheists. Secondly, they stoutly contended that all believers in God were to be treated equally. And what about non-believers too? Right? What, are you supposed to shun the non-believers? So, for example, in North Carolina, James Iredell, who later served on the U.S. Supreme Court, argued that the oath was a sufficient test of religious faith, and the faith need not be Christian. Similarly, in Massachusetts, Daniel Schutt, a Christian minister, told his state's ratifying convention, "I believe, sir, that there are worthy characters among men of every denomination." Okay, so that's a little excerpt from that article about religious freedoms, and I don't appreciate it when people are shoving their religion down my fucking throat. Okay, point blank. I don't do that to you. Don't turn every event into a proselytization or church event, please. That's just my 2 cents. It pushes a lot of people away, okay? And I'm not directing this at any one person. There are a lot of people that do this, whether it's the Trump and the Biden thing or your religion or your belief system. If it's not affecting you, then who cares? So I'll touch on this. They keep calling us anti-this, anti-that, anti-vax, anti-mandate, anti-mask, anti-whatever. And that's the problem. We're not anti-anything. At least I'll speak for myself. I'm not anti-anything. I'm pro. I'm pro-freedom. I'm pro-constitution. I'm pro-civil rights. So when you're pro, you're not against. When you're pro and when you're for freedom in the Constitution, it allows everybody to join in. And we can have differing beliefs. We don't have to agree on everything. And that's the point. That's what makes this country beautiful. We're not robots. And this is very short. Another 10th Amendment Center article linked in the description. And these are 3 reminders from the Bill of Rights by Jacob Hornberger. As a condition for accepting the Constitution, the federal Constitution, the American people demanded the enactment of the Bill of Rights immediately after the ratification of the Constitution. They had been assured that the Constitution was calling into existence a national government whose powers were limited to those enumerated in the Constitution. This is the biggest point that people need to understand. The federal Constitution is a limitation on the powers of government. But that did not satisfy them. They wanted the Bill of Rights to make it clear that the federal government was prohibited from doing the things that are listed in the Bill of Rights. There are several important things to notice about the Bill of Rights. First, the Bill of Rights does not give people rights. Our ancestors understood that rights come from nature and God, not from government. People's rights pre-exist the government. Second, the Bill of Rights consists of prohibitions and restrictions on the federal government. Why is this important? Because our ancestors knew that the federal power would inevitably attract people to public office who would do the types of things that were being restricted. They would criminalize speech, especially speech that was critical of federal officials. They would ban protests against the government. Are we not seeing these things? They would force people to subscribe to a certain religion. It's not happening, but some people do want that. They would seize people's guns. It's happening in certain places. Like I said, the red flag laws. They would punish any malefactor by simply having civil or military agents take people into custody, incarcerate them, torture them, or execute them, all without trial by jury and due process of law. The Bill of Rights was to serve as a reminder that federal officials had no legitimate power to do any of these things. Third, the Bill of Rights no our ancestors knew crises and urgency honored way by which people lost their own government. During such people be afraid, and their natural tendency is to look to keep them safe and secure. They forget the biggest threat to their liberty is their very own government. They eagerly get away their liberty for security. When the crisis has passed, they discover that the government is unwilling to give up power it acquired over them. And that's being right here, right now, all across this country, here in the state of New Hampshire. And we need to drive this thing. And the only thing that's going to drive this back is if we can rally together, red, white, and stand up, not argue about Trump and Biden. Because Trump and Biden are ones of the same vulture. So I want to thank everybody for bearing with me through this thing. I know I stuttered and all that a little bit. But these are important issues that we need to put out there and think about and talk about. You know, how are we going to grow this movement? How are we going to get bigger? How are we going to move forward? How are we going to work together if we can't have a discussion and a conversation about why we have the certain beliefs that we have, right? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen if it's just team red and team blue. So thank you, Kevin. If anybody, I'll try to see if there's any, is there any questions in here? Sorry, I don't have a computer or anything like that. I'm not a technically savvy individual. But yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining me on this stream. Please share far and wide. Wings of the same vulture. We're never going to get anywhere with that type of mindset. So remember that we're all sovereign beings, and the individual, you and I, are the smallest minority. It's time to stand up, people.